Üsküdar'a giderken alnına bir yağmur, Üsküdar'a giderken alnına bir yağmur, Katibimin setresi uzun eteği çamur, Katibimin setresi uzun eteği çamur. Katip uykudan uyanmış gözleri mahmur, Katip uykudan uyanmış gözleri mahmur. Katip benim ben katibin elle karışır, Katibime kolumda gömlekli güzel yaraşır. Üsküdar'a giderken bir mendil buldum, Üsküdar'a giderken bir mendil buldum, mendilimin içine lokum doldurdum, mendilimin içine lokum doldurdum. Katibimi ararken yanımda buldum, Katibimi ararken yanımda buldum. Katip benim ben katibin elle karışır, Katibime kolumda gömlekli güzel yaraşır. Katip benim ben katibin elle karışır, Katibime kolumda gömlekli güzel yaraşır.
אוויר הרים צלול כיין, וריח אורנים, נישא ברוח הערביים עם כל פעמונים. ובתרדמת אילן באבן, שבויה בחלומה, העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. איך יבשו בורות המים, כיכר השוק ריקה, ואין פוקדת הר הבית בעיר העתיקה. ובמערות אשר בסלע, והלילות רוחות, ואין יורד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. אך בבואי היום לשיר לך ולך לקשור כתרים, קטונתי מצעיר בנייך ומאחרוני המשפחה. המשוררים. כי שמך צורב את השפתיים, כי נשיקת שריו. אם אשכחך ירושלים, אשר כולה זהב. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. חזרנו אל בורות המים, לשוק ולכיכר, שופר קורא בהר הבית, בעיר העתיקה. ובמערות אשר בסלע, אלפי שמשות זורפות, נשוב נרד אל ים המלח, בדרך יריחו. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור.
Aşk bahçemi süsleyen inci çiçeğim misin? Aşk bahçemi süsleyen inci çiçeğim misin?
Gecemi aydınlatan ateş böceğim misin?
Gecemi aydınlatan ateş böceğim misin? Gençlik başımda duman, ilk aşkım ilk heyecan. Gençlik başımda duman, ilk aşkım ilk heyecan.
Kovaladıkça kaçan ateş böceğim misin?
Kovaladıkça kaçan ateş böceğim misin? Bahar dalında yaprak, yıldızdan daha parlak. Bahar dalında yaprak, yıldızdan daha parlak.
Gözyaşımdan yuvarlak ateş böceğim misin?
Gözyaşımdan yuvarlak, ateş böceğim misin? Gençlik başımda duman, ilk aşkım ilk heyecan. Gençlik başımda duman, ilk aşkım ilk heyecan.
Kovaladıkça kaçan ateş böceğim misin?
Kovaladıkça kaçan ateş böceğim misin? Doğmayan güneşimsin, rüyalarda eşimsin. Doğmayan güneşimsin, rüyalarda eşimsin.
Sevgilim söyler misin? Ateş böceğim misin?
Sevgilim söyler misin? Ateş böceğim misin? Gençlik başımda duman, ilk aşkım ilk heyecan. Gençlik başımda duman, ilk aşkım ilk...
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, שא עיני אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. This is Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, welcoming you to this week's Torah study. Actually, let me remove the background here. Let's see how I do this. Settings, virtual background, none, because we are here in Yerushalayim. I'm sitting at one of the hotels here in Yerushalayim, the Inbal Hotel, it's called. And we're going to be broadcasting from here today. So I don't need a virtual background. We can have Yerushalayim as the background. In fact, here, if you look, we're right next to a park called Gana Pa'amon, Liberty Bell Park, I think they call it in English. And just sitting outside here, and we're doing a study, and it should be really nice. Spending about, I arrived here on Thursday night. So it's been Thursday night, Friday night, 2 nights, Saturday night, and I'll probably go back, I think, on Monday. Tomorrow, I want to go explore, and I apologize right now, I have a bit of a cold, so excuse me for that. Shabbat Shalom, Ruth, I have a bit of a cold. Tomorrow, I want to go explore some archaeological ruins that I've been meaning to see for a long time, and that'll be the southern, on the southern wall of the Temple Mount, the southern wall archaeological excavations. So I'm going to try to take a look at those tomorrow. Yesterday, I did an amazing tiul. I did an amazing hike. I started on the Mount of Olives, and I went down through there's a Jewish cemetery all over the Mount of Olives, dating back to ancient times. And so I went down through the Jewish cemetery, and then stopped off at a couple of historical sites. They happen to be Christian sites. That has nothing to do with me. I just did it for historical reasons. Christian history interests me, even though I am in no way, shape, or form a Christian or a Messianic. And then eventually made it down into the valley there. It's called the Kidron Valley, and then went up the other side to the eastern wall of the Temple Mount. So the eastern wall of the Temple Mount is also the eastern wall that also formed the ancient eastern wall of the city of Jerusalem itself, because when you go out of the old city of Jerusalem off to the east, there's a sudden drop, or a very steep drop, down into what's called the Kidron Valley, which is the valley I walked through yesterday. At any rate, made it up to the eastern wall and found one of the two gates there. The gate is called the Golden Gate. Sometimes in Hebrew they call it Sha'ar Arachamim, rabbinical legend says that the Messiah is going to enter Jerusalem through Sha'ar HaRachamim, through this eastern gate, through this golden gate. So went up to it, actually was able to get very close to it and saw what potentially, not 100% sure, but I know that there are some stones there. I'm not sure if they're above ground or underground, because apparently this gate is, apparently the expert on this, on the eastern wall and on this gate, says that it's built on top of another gate that's underground, but there might be some stones that are exposed there from Solomonic times, from the time of Solomon's first temple. Not 100% sure. I have to go over the literature on that again, but it was a really amazing tour. Then I got in trouble with the Israeli police for going inside this little fenced off area that you're not supposed to go in. The fences off the actual Golden Gate, or the actual Sha'ar HaRachamim. Well, being the rebel that I am, I went inside the gate. Actually, there was a hole in the gate, so I didn't like break anything or anything like that. I went inside the gate area and actually was able to get right up close to this Sha'ar HaRachamim, this Golden Gate, and then had a little talking to by the Israeli police, but we all worked it out in the end. Now we're buddies, we're best friends. So that was yesterday, and tomorrow I hope, as I said, to spend time in the old city and explore some of the south side archaeological ruins, and maybe do some of the other things in that area there. There's the tunnel tours, and there's a bunch of stuff. I don't know, they've really increased in the whole Western Wall and the whole Kotel area. They've really increased. They have a bunch of exhibitions out. I don't even know what's there anymore. There's so many of them. So I'm going to check that out tomorrow. Maybe I'll live stream some. We shall see. Yeah, we'll play it by ear. So that's that. Welcome to today's Torah study, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. So a friend of mine asked me to speak a little bit about the news regarding the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah. Shabbat Shalom, Lieutenant Gregory Stephen. Okay, Lieutenant. Asked me to speak a bit about the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah and what I thought about it. And of course, while I think it's always good for Israel's enemies to be eliminated, that's never a bad thing. And this guy has a lot of Jewish blood on his hands. The fact of the matter is, I don't think it's going to solve. Okay, you got it. The fact of the matter is, I don't think it's going to solve the problem long term. I think the only solution, as I've said now for a long time, is Israel to return to true Torah, to return to the Tanakh, to reject false philosophies such as worship of foreign cultures, such as American/Western culture, and their false gods, and figuratively and literally their false god Jesus, and also the rejection of Pharisaic/rabbinical Judaism. So I've heard a lot of talk today. I went to a Shabbat table last night in Jerusalem, in the neighborhood of Shari Chesed. Today I went to Kiddush in the neighborhood of Baka, and everyone talks about, like, the only solution is unity, unity, unity. The nation of Israel has to be unified. There has to be unity. And that's, of course, true. That goes without saying, and it's a very nice thought, but they never really answer the question, unified around what? Or if they're not saying it explicitly, what they really mean is being unified around rabbinical Judaism, rabbinical/Talmudic Judaism. And I would say most, at least many rabbinical Jews, Orthodox rabbinical Jews, what their goal is to set up a rabbinical/Talmudic/Pharisaic, we'll call it Talmudic state, in the land of Israel, and they believe that this is going to solve the problems of the people of Israel. But it's not going to solve the problems. It's going to create civil war. Most of the nation cannot, if they're going to be unified, they cannot be unified around rabbinical/Talmudic Judaism. No normal Israeli who's not been indoctrinated into the cult of Orthodox Judaism is going to put up with nonsense such as, I can't cut toilet paper, I can't rip toilet paper on Shabbat, or I can't use my cell phone on Shabbat, for instance, or any of the other ridiculous distortions and strict measures that the rabbis have taken, which have no basis whatsoever in the Torah. So I agree with the sentiment obviously that the nation has to be unified. What these people, whether they know it or not, I think some of them believe that. I think that some of them, when they say that they think the nation needs to be unified, that deep down they're really thinking that there has to be a different form of Judaism. There has to be a more Tanakhic form of Judaism. That's what I think. But whether they realize it or not, this unification of the nation is not going to come around Orthodox slash rabbinical slash Pharisaic Judaism, whatever you want to call it. It's going to have to come around a more Karaite slash Tanakhic slash Choserim Tanach, Choser Tanach kind of expression of the Torah. And as I said, while I'm going to continue to refer to our movement as a Karaite movement, the secondary name, maybe this will eventually become the primary name, because I really do want to distinguish us from the traditional Karaites they're useless, basically. To be 100% honest, they're completely useless. They're just an historical relic that they're afraid to fight. They've given up the fight a long time ago. They are already have become Chatzi, half rabbinical, and they just basically look like another sect of Sephardi Judaism, almost with some differences. They act like Sephardi Jews. They sound like Sephardi Jews. They pray like Sephardi Jews. They have halachot like Sephardi Jews. They come from a Sephardi or Mizrahi. I'm just saying Sephardi is the blanket statement. They come from Egypt, most of them, so they've taken on the Mizrahi, kind of approach towards Torah, and basically they're useless. They are not. They don't have the ability. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the will to keep up the fight to really spread Tanakh-based Judaism to the entire nation of Israel. So I'd like to start distinguishing in a more clear way our movement, the World Alliance of Qara'im, from the Egyptian Karaites, and I certainly want to distinguish us from the Nehemiah Gordonites, who I don't even know what they are anymore. Are they even a Jewish movement anymore? I don't even think it's a Jewish movement anymore. It's a bunch of Christians slash Messianics with a leader who I don't think I have no idea whether he's Christian or Messianic, whatever the heck he is. He certainly panders to the Christians and the Messianics. So I obviously want to distinguish our movement from that. They've completely that branch has completely apostated itself and is at this point completely irrelevant to the future of the nation of Israel, in my opinion. It's a shame, wasted opportunity, because Nehemiah is very talented, very knowledgeable, but he's decided to put all of his efforts into I don't know what. Who knows what drives the guy? It's not my business. So at any rate, I've come up with another name for our movement besides being Karaites. I've come up with the other name, which is Choserim B'Tanach, those who've returned to the Tanakh. And of course, it's a play on words of the idea of Choserim B'Tshuva. Choserim B'Tshuva are Jews that were secular and became Orthodox Jews. So they call themselves Choserim B'Tshuva, those who have repented, basically, who've returned through repentance to Orthodox Judaism. So instead of Choserim B'Tshuva, we can refer to ourselves as Choserim B'Tanach. And anyone who is knowledgeable in modern Hebrew and who is knowledgeable of Israeli society will immediately get the reference when I say, or if you say, or if anybody says to somebody, "Oh, what do you? I'm a Choser B'Tanach," they'll immediately understand everything that you're trying to say and all the implications of you're ripping toilet paper right now. You're in big trouble, Lieutenant. I'm gonna have to send the colonel after you, Colonel Sanders. So anyone will immediately get the reference and understand that it's a play on words of the Choserim B'Tshuva, those who return to Orthodox Judaism, but in this case, Choserim B'Tanach. We're returning not to Orthodox Judaism, but we're returning to original Tanakhic Judaism. So this is to get back to the original point that my friend had asked me, what do I think about the elimination of Nas Salala? Well, good riddance. See you later. Nice knowing you. But it's not going to solve the problems. I think that actually, if you read now, Iran is now saying, now you've really done it, Israel. Now you're in deep trouble. And I think that actually might be true. I think that my heart tells me that is true, that this is actually going to exacerbate our problems because we cannot solve the problems militarily. Just as Rabbi Kahana many years ago thought that the solution to all the problems was just to kick the Arabs out of Israel, and that would solve all our problems. Well, now the secular, semi-traditional, secular Israeli leadership thinks that that there's a military solution to the problem. There wasn't a political solution to the problem. There's not a military solution to the problem. There's only a theological / religious solution to the problem, and that's when the nation of Israel comes back and returns to the original covenant, returns to the original Brit with Yahweh, and gives up its two false forms of false philosophies that dominate the nation right now. One is, of course, American / Western culture and all that comes with it, and the second, of course, is Orthodox / rabbinical / Talmudic Judaism, which is a distortion, as I always like to say, the first Reform Jewish movement in the history of our nation. Okay, so that's my opinion regarding that. Other than that, so as you know, I'm living up in the Golan Heights in Katzrin. I'll be back up there, as I said, on Monday, and we are starting a Karaite community there. So if it is in your heart, if you live already in Israel and you want to move up to the Golan Heights, it's absolutely beautiful up in the Golan Heights. Please do so. And if you're outside of Israel, then get your papers together, come to Israel, and move up to Katzrin in the Golan Heights, and we can have an actual thriving in-person Karaite community going on up there. So I invite everyone who would like to be part of a live, actual Karaite community to do so. The World Alliance of Qara'im and myself, I have in no way, shape, or form can I help out with things like making aliyah or writing a letter to the government or doing a conversion through the World Alliance of Qara'im that leads to the ability to make aliyah. I don't have the ability to do that. So you'll have to, if you cannot prove that you're Jewish to the satisfaction of the government of Israel, if you can, then you could just make aliyah through, let's say, nefesh b'nefesh or something like that. And if you can't, you'll have to do some kind of conversion, whether it's a Reform conversion, conservative conversion, or Orthodox conversion is up to you, but you'll have to do some kind of conversion that is recognized by the state of Israel that will allow you to immigrate to Israel. Another option is to come to Israel, but not to live here as a citizen. There are other statuses. There are people who live here for decades and they never become citizens of Israel. I don't know what all the details are. I guess you could speak to an immigration lawyer. Maybe they run a business here and they stay on and they have some kind of special visa, or they are perpetual students and they have a perpetual student visa. There's also a status called Toshav, which is a permanent resident. It's kind of like a green card holder in the United States. I don't know exactly all the details about that. The point is, you don't necessarily have to become a citizen of Israel to live in Israel. Of course, you won't get the benefits. You won't get all the benefits. Actually, I think Toshav, a permanent resident, does get a lot of benefits. But I don't know if I don't think it's all the benefits of citizenship. But nonetheless, check it out, and you'll have to work that out on your own. I would strongly recommend against. Some people have so the KJU, Karaite Jewish University, and the American branch of the Egyptian Karaites, they offer a conversion program. I've stated my opinion regarding this conversion program in the past, and it's not what paper it's written on. It's completely useless. Okay, I don't think anybody. I think maybe one person has been able to make aliyah using this conversion program. I might be wrong about that. If I am, my apologies. From what I understand, it is completely useless. You cannot use this piece of paper in an efficient way to make aliyah to become a citizen of the state of Israel. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but that's what I understand. And it cost about $3,000. So you go through this $3,000, you get the certificate that you're now officially part of this American Karaite Judaism community, that you're now officially a Karaite Jew. But what do you do with this? I've made my opinion clear. You're not going to be accepted by other Jews. You're not even going to be accepted by all Karaites, because Egyptian Karaites it's a very insular community. So you're not even going to be accepted as a Karaite by some of the older and more traditional Egyptian Karaites. Try finding a nice Karaite girl in Israel to marry. Good luck with that one. They're going to think of you as a goy, whether you like it or not. And try making aliyah with that piece of paper. I don't think you're going to be very successful. That's my opinion. Again, could be wrong. If somebody knows different, update me. So the best way to go about it is to go through recognized channels that the state of Israel recognizes as if you cannot again prove your Jewishness to the satisfaction of the Israeli government, then you'll have to and that is recognized by the Israeli government. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. I've spoken about this in other places. Let's see. Is there anything else that I have to say at this point? I don't know. I think we should get going with the Torah study right now. And any questions, any comments before we do? Maybe I need to go grab a glass of water in a little while. Oh boy. And battery is definitely waning here, so I might have to move to a different place at a certain point because I don't have any way to plug in. Actually, I do. Hold on a second. Let me take a break. Let me put on just a drop of music, and let me try to get something set up so that my battery doesn't get completely depleted. Just give me 1 second, please. Oh, excuse me. Okay, we're back. That stays. Okay. So, any questions, any comments before we start our study for today? Anybody? Do I agree with Kahana about removing the Arabs? In general, yes. I think that a small minority can remain if there are those who wish to accept Yahweh, the God of Israel. Then they can remain. If they want to convert, I guess they can convert. But we certainly cannot have a huge minority of a different nation, a different culture, a different language. Basically, they either have to assimilate, they have to become part of the nation of Israel, or there's a certain small minority of them that can remain if they're loyal. There are Arabs that do like the state of Israel and are loyal, at least tend to be loyal to the state of Israel, such as the Druze, say, uh, the residents of Abu Ghosh, which is a town outside of Yerushalayim on the way to Tel Aviv, on the way to Beit Shemesh. But in general, it obviously goes without saying, this land belongs to the people of Israel. It doesn't belong to any other nation. If a very, very small minority, there's no problem. We have Filipinos that work here in Israel, right? But they don't have any they don't have any illusions, or they don't have any, what's the word, any dreams of establishing a state here in Israel and supplanting us. And they're not citizens. I think most of them. I mean, maybe a couple of are, but they're not citizens. Anyway, the simple answer is yes. I do agree with Kahana. Yes. Okay. Let's. But again, I think the solution is not political. Like Kahana's solution was essentially political, although he did have intentions of establishing eventually establishing a Orthodox Jewish / Talmudic state, an Orthodox Jewish, or I'll call it a Talmudic theocracy here in Israel. Whether he admitted it or not, that was his ultimate goal. I don't think he saw it possible in his lifetime, but I think that he eventually wanted that to occur. Let me just get some more water. But essentially, his solution was just political. Throw out all the Arabs, and all our problems are going to be solved. No, the Arabs here, the enemy that lives within us and the enemy that lives around us, this is symptomatic. This is our punishment for not following the covenant. The solution is not a political solution. It's not a military solution. There is only a religious / theological solution, and that's to return to the true covenant of our ancestors, and then these problems will just magically disappear one way or another. Yahweh will create a series of events that will eliminate these threats, either by turning our enemies into our friends or by getting rid of them. I always like to say that among the Arabs, if you can even call them Arabs, the Arabized Levantines, as a good friend of mine says, 1/3 of them will end up being eliminated. I'm sorry. What do I always say? No, I forgot what I always say. 1/3 eliminated. 1/3. I don't know. I'll think about it another time. Anyway, that's my answer. Okay, let's start digging in to Leviticus chapter 19. Let me share the screen. And we're going to do window and this and share. Okay, so you guys should be able to. Oops, I don't know what I did there. Okay, you guys should be able to see me now, and you should be able to see the screen. We are in Leviticus chapter 19, so let's pick it up there. Oh, I really hate having a cold. It really stinks, but it's okay. It's going away. I was wiped out in the middle of the week. I was wiped out, and I had to work. I do have a day job, believe it or not, and I had to work it, and that was very, very unpleasant. When you're wiped out, like you have a fever and a headache, and you have to work. unpleasant. Okay, so Leviticus chapter 19. So even though I'm sniffling, I do feel a lot better now. Thank God. Okay, so Leviticus 19. Let's bring up the Hebrew. So we finished off. We got up to verse 16 last week. Remember, we mentioned that according to the secular scholars, the documentary hypothesis will have school that, which doesn't concern us, but it's important to know because if you ever do read secular scholarly literature on the Old Testament, on the Tanakh, or watch videos, because a lot of good content out there that is done by secular scholars. You don't have to agree with everything they say. Then they might refer to this as part of the Holiness Code. The Holiness Code is Leviticus chapters, I think it's 17 through 26, if I remember correctly. And there's a repetition of certain key phrases. Be holy because I'm holy. And I am Yahweh. Okay. A certain commandment is stated. And then afterwards it says, I am Yahweh. In other words, Yahweh is emphasizing that remember who's giving you this commandment. Okay. Remember who's talking to you here. Okay. So we're in the middle of this Holiness Code. We got up to verse 16. So let's just review verse 16. Verse 16 says, Lo telech rechir bi'amecha, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, ani Yahweh. Do not go around tattletaling. Do not go around as a peddler of gossip among your people. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Do not stand idly by when your fellow man's blood, your fellow Israelite's blood is spilled. Literally, it says, Ta'amod al dam re'echa. Do not stand still, is the implication. Over the blood of your fellow man, ani Yahweh. And here we have that phrase, ani Yahweh. Okay, so let's continue on in verse 17. Let's continue on in verse 17. Okay, lo tisna eth achicha be'levavecha, hocheach tochiach eth amitecha, v'lo tisa alav chet. So let's just translate it word for word, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Do not hate. And by the way, remember this. The stuff we're learning right now is so much more accessible than the technicalities of the sacrificial services or the technicalities of ritual cleanliness and uncleanliness, right? So I said we're going to get into easier parts of Leviticus. Now we're getting to easier parts of Leviticus. Okay, it's more more accessible to our way of thinking, right? Rather than the details. I love the details of the sacrificial system. As I said many times, I love the details of purity and impurity laws. I love in Exodus the details of the building of the tabernacle, of the clothes of the Kohen Gadol. These are all extremely fascinating to me for various reasons, but they are difficult to get through. Worth the effort, but difficult to get through. Okay. Lo tisna eth achicha belevavecha. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Brother, by the way, ach, the word brother, in this case, so ach literally means brother, but it's often translated as kin. So by extension, many times, I would say the majority of the times, throughout the Tanakh, when you see the word ach, it doesn't mean brother per se. What it means is kin. It means a close relative, okay? Someone in your extended family, your cousin, your uncle, whatever it may be, okay? So lo tisna et achicha belevavecha. Don't hate your brother in your heart, okay? What does that mean? You must certainly rebuke your fellow Israelite, your fellow man, your fellow member of the nation. Velo tisa alav chet. And you shall not bear because of him, or you shall not. We'll see how various translators translate it, but velo tisa alav chet, and do not allow him to sin. Do not allow sin to be to be brought upon him. Okay, so a lot of times the rabbis understand this as, so it says here, don't hate your brother in your heart, which of course is a wonderful commandment in and of itself, but it's really not. It's a wonderful idea in and of itself, but it's really just a prelude to an explanation. Okay, so how do you not hate your brother in your heart? The rest of the verse tells us that by rebuking, by pointing out what your brother is doing wrong, that you will remove sin from him, or you'll not allow sin to be accounted to him. Okay, so that's really the commandment here. The commandment is when you see your brother doing something wrong, if you hold it in, if you see your brother is doing something wrong, or your fellow Israelite is doing something wrong, your near kin is doing something wrong, and you hold it in, okay, then it's as if you're hating him in your heart because you are keeping it inside, right? If I saw my close friend riding his bicycle and I saw that he was about off the cliff and I didn't say anything, then that's a form of hating my brother, right? I could say something to him, like, hey, watch out, there's a cliff coming up. And if I don't say anything, then by not saying anything, I am expressing hatred towards him because I'm not preventing him from danger. In this case, I'm not preventing him from chet. You should translate it as sin, transgression. Okay, so that's the idea. Okay, the way, or if you do not rebuke, if you do not point out what your brother is doing wrong to him, then you're essentially expressing hatred towards him because he's going to get punished for this. You could have prevented him from getting punished by saying something and didn't. Okay. All right. Let's get a little translation and commentary on that one. So that's 17, and I'll tell you a funny story. Oh God, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if my buddies Eric and Daniel are here, but they know the story already. Another friend of mine who shall remain nameless. Okay. Anywho, verse 17. Okay. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely reprove your fellow and not bear guilt because of him. Okay, so I translate that a little bit differently, but I think actually Robert Alter is correct there. V'lo tisa alav chet. Let me just see one thing. Tisa alav chet. Lo ta'amod al dam ve'echa lo tisa alav chet. Okay. So Robert Alter is translating it. It might actually be a better translation as if you do not say anything to him, then you're going to be blamed. In other words, you could have prevented him from doing something. You didn't. So now maybe God is going to hold you accountable for not saying something. Okay. If I see that my fellow man is eating pig, I don't know, I'm just using this classic example, or if I know that the hamburger is actually a pig burger, and I don't say anything, then maybe Yahweh is going to say, you could have prevented him from eating pig. You didn't. And now you're going to be held responsible for that. I'm going to put that back on you because you hated your brother in your heart. You could have said something and you didn't. Okay. Let's get a little commentary. You surely shall reprove your fellow. The obligation to reprove someone you see engaged in a wrongful act may be linked psychologically with the immediately preceding injunction not to hate your brother in your heart. I don't think it might be. I think for sure it is. Witnessing immoral behavior without attempting to intervene, the observer may feel resentment or contempt towards the perpetrator, who in fact might have conceivably been dissuaded from the act by reproof. Okay, fair enough. We could, of course, get other commentaries, but I think the idea is generally clear here. Okay. So now I'll tell you the funny story. So recently, I had a friend, or shall I say a former friend, who I was staying by him, and it was not an easy. When I first came to Israel, I needed a temporary place to stay until I got things settled down. Now I think I'm very settled. Very happy up in Katsanin in the Golan Heights. Very happy visiting Yerushalayim, visiting Jerusalem this Shabbat. But when I first got here, a friend had offered to put me up for a little while until I got my bearings straight. But it was extremely impossible to live with this person. Every little thing that you did wrong in his house, he would record in his mind, and then the next day or so, or 2 days, maybe he'd hold it in if he could. He would let me know about it. Okay, so little things like I forgot to turn off. I went to the bathroom and I forgot to turn off the light. But then I know how obsessed he is about not wasting even a tiny drop of electricity. So 10 minutes later, I would go back into the bathroom. I said, "Oh, right, I forgot to turn off the light," and I turned off the light. But still, it was already recorded in his mind or in his in his vision. He saw that I forgot to turn off the light. Anyway, one time he said I made a mess of his place. Okay, his place looked like a complete pigsty. It looked like a bomb went off. I used to joke with him that you should do yourself a favor and give your GPS coordinates so they can blow your place up. It's so disgusting. I mean, I don't even know how you can live in it. I didn't say that at the beginning, but when we started having our falling out, I said that. Any rate, what's the point, and how does this relate to it? So when he would see that, oh, so right, I was saying, so one night I left, so his place was a complete mess. It was beyond disgusting. And one night, I think, and I'm a very clean person. I'm obsessively clean, as a matter of fact. I'm like a neat freak. And one night, I was extremely exhausted. I'd bought a bag of pretzels for us to share, and I guess I forgot to roll up the bag of pretzels and put it away, even though his stuff of his was all over the place. And he rebuked me for that. So how did he rebuke me for that, or for leaving the electricity on for 5 minutes extra, or for maybe even longer? I don't know. Or using too much water. He would monitor how much water I'd use during my showers. It was really crazy, as a matter of fact. Anyway, he would sit me down the following day, and I didn't realize it the first time, but after a while, I said, "Uh-oh, here I know exactly what's coming," because he'd always start with the same thing. He would say to me, "Melech, Melech, do you know what the hardest mitzvah in the Torah is?" And I'd say, at first I said no, but then after a while, I said, "Oh, okay, yes, I do. Here we go again." So the hardest mitzvah is ochech tochiach et amitecha. You must certainly rebuke your fellow man. And and then after that, he'd say, "You realize that yesterday you left a bag of potato chips on my coffee table. You forgot to roll it up and put it away. Or do you realize that you took a shower for 10 minutes and I only take showers for 5 minutes? Or do you realize that you left the light on in your bedroom for half an hour before you realized you forgot that you left it on and then turned it off?" So basically, this was his introductory paragraph, or his introductory way of basically lashing into me for some little petty rule in his house that I had in his house, if you can even call it a house, in his shack, that I had violated. So he'd always sit down and say to me, sit down the next morning and say, "Melech, do you know what the hardest mitzvah in the Torah is?" I said, "Yes." I'll make up a name. "Dave, please tell me." He said, "It's hocheach tochiach et amitecha. You must certainly rebuke your fellow man." And then I knew I was about to get a tongue lashing for some rule that I had violated in his house. Well, thank God, I'm long gone from that place. And I can laugh about it now, but boy, it was unpleasant at the time, because when I came back to Israel, I had to get my bearings. I needed a little time to figure out where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing, all of this kind of stuff. And I was very dependent on him, or I felt I was very dependent on him. So, anyway, neither here nor there. Eventually, we decided to go our separate ways, and I don't even speak to the person anymore, and probably better that way. Okay, that's my little story. Let's move on. Let's do a quick sound check. Can you guys hear me? First of all, by the way, can everybody hear me? What are we down to? 30% here. Can I get a sound check? Somebody, you guys hear me? Okay, cool. All right, let's move on then. So verse 18. Okay. So lot kom willo titor eth bene amecha we hafta le re'echa kamocha ani Yahweh. So do not, and this is a famous verse. Okay. Lo tikom velo titor. Tikom is take revenge. Titor is to hold a grudge. So don't take revenge or don't hold a grudge. Et bnei amecha, against literally the sons of your people. Okay, your other Israelites. Okay, ve'ahavta re'echa kamocha. You should love your neighbor as you love yourself. This is the famous verse. This is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17. Ve'ahavta re'echa kamocha. Love your fellow man as yourself. Ani Yahweh. I am Yahweh. And again, we see that because this is the so-called Holiness Code, that one of the characteristics of these chapters is we constantly reminded who's telling us. We've seen this many times before. Ani Yahweh. In fact, I see a pattern here. So every second verse ends with Ani Yahweh. Right? Let's see how far back this goes. Starting with verse 9. Before that, we just had I won't say just, but we had a tirade, a rant about not following. I don't mean it in a bad way, in a positive way, about not following foreign gods. Oh no, we even get it there. But look at this pattern here. Okay, verse 17 and 18 are a pair. We can think of it that way. And the second of the pair ends with Ani Yahweh. 15, 16. 16 ends with Ani Yahweh. 13, 14. 14 ends with Ani Yahweh. 11, 12. 12 ends with Ani Yahweh. 9, 10. 10 ends with Ani Yahweh Elohechem. Okay, if we go back, see? No, this is a bit more technical commandments, but we do have 2, 3. So 4 ends with Ani Yahweh Elohechem. And 8 ends with, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Okay, but starting here in verse 9, we have that pattern. Every second verse ends with Ani Yahweh or Ani Yahweh Elohechem. Okay, so don't take revenge, don't hold a grudge against the children of your people, against your fellow Israelites. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Okay, Ani Yahweh, I am Yahweh. This is a famous verse. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's where it comes from. Let's get a little Robert Alter on this one. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say. Oh, he doesn't have anything to say. I cannot believe it. That is fast. That is absolutely shocking to me. No, it couldn't be. This is verse 18. I have no idea why. Okay. All right. Well, then he doesn't have anything to say. Strange. I thought he would write like half a book on that one. All right. Let's go to one of our other commentaries. No, I don't want to do that because it's going to be preachy. I know it already. But I will point out a couple things. So first of all, the commandment here, okay? So the context here is et bnei amecha, okay? The commandment here is the children of your people. In other words, fellow Israelites. So these verses, or this verse 18, is referring to your fellow Israelites. So when it says love your neighbor as yourself, it's really referring to your fellow Israelite. Okay? Yes, of course, it's a great idea to love someone from another nation, but that's not the commandment here. The commandment is a reference to your fellow Israelite, that you should have as much concern or as much love for your fellow Israelite as you would for yourself. Okay, you should treat your fellow Israelite as you would treat yourself, just as you would want. Well, I guess we can quote a rabbinical source here, the famous Hillel, right? You know what? I have an idea. Love your neighbor as yourself. I bet there's a Wikipedia article on this one. Let's look it up. Mm, Wikipedia. Love thy neighbor. Okay, so there's not much here, but let's say love thy neighbor or love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor or love thy neighbor refers to the biblical phrase, you shall love your neighbor as yourself from the book of Leviticus. In Leviticus 19:18, that's an easy one to remember. If you want to sound like a real biblical scholar, you just quote chapter and verse, 19:18. In the Hebrew Bible about the ethic of reciprocity known as the golden rule or great commandments. Okay, so let's look at the golden rule. Just a little bit. The golden rule is the principle of treating others as one would want to be treated by them. It's sometimes called an ethics of reciprocity, meaning that you should reciprocate to others how you would like them to treat you, not necessarily how they actually treat you. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay. Various expressions of this rule can be found in the tenets of most religions and creeds throughout the ages. The maxim may appear as a positive or negative injunction, governing conduct. Treat others as you would like others to treat you, positive or directive form. Do not treat others in ways that you would not like to be treated, negative prohibitive form. What you wish upon others, you wish upon yourself, empathetic or responsive form. Okay. All right, let's read it a little bit. Why not? Possibly the earliest affirmation of the maxim of reciprocity reflecting the ancient Egyptian goddess Ma'at appears in the story of the eloquent peasant, which dates to the Middle Kingdom. Now this is the command, do to the doer, to make him do. This proverb embodies the do ut des principle. A late period papyrus contains an early negative affirmation of the golden rule, that which you hate to be done, do not do to another. Okay. Sanskrit, Tamil, ancient Greece, ancient Persia, ancient Rome, religious context. Let's read one or two more, huh? Let's go for Sanskrit. In Mahabharata, the ancient epic of India, there's a discourse in which sage Brisapati, oh, I know Brisapati. He owns the Indian restaurant down the block. Tells the king, Yudhishthira, the following about Dharma, a philosophical understanding of values and actions that lend good order to life. One should never do something to others that one would regard as an injury to one's own self. In brief, this is Dharma. Anything else is succumbing to desire. Oh boy, I'm running out of battery quick. I may have to change locations. And so on and so forth. What I do want to point out is a rabbinical source because it's famous. And I think that here we can actually read Rashi for once, even though I'm not a big fan of Rashi, as you guys know. Rashi commented, what constitutes revenge and grudge using the example of two men? One man would not lend the other his axe. Then the next day, the same man asks the other for his axe. If a second man should say, I will not lend it to you just as you did not lend it to me, it constitutes revenge. If here it is for you, I am not like you who did not lend to me, it constitutes a grudge. Rashi concludes his commentary by quoting Rabbi Akiva on love of neighbor. This is a fundamental principle of Torah. So Hillel the elder. So this is the famous rabbinical statement of the phrase. So Hillel the elder used this verse as the most important message of the Torah for his teachings. Once he was challenged by a Gentile who asked to be converted under the condition that the Torah be explained to him while he stood on one foot. Hillel accepted him as a candidate for conversion to Judaism, but drawing on Leviticus 19:18, briefed the man, "What is hateful to you?" In other words, if you could sum up, this person asked Hillel to sum up the Torah in one sentence, and he said, "What is hateful to you? Do not do to your fellow." This is the whole Torah. The rest is explanation. Go and learn. So Hillel recognized brotherly love as a fundamental principle of Jewish ethics. Rabbi Akiva agreed, while Shimon ben Azai suggested that the principle of love must have its foundations in Genesis chapter 1, which teaches that all men are the offspring of Adam, who is made in the image of God. In other words, because we're all made in the image of God, we all have to respect and love each other. According to Jewish rabbinic literature, the first man, Adam, represents the unity of mankind. This is echoed in the modern preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Right. Okay. So this is a famous verse, and this is a fundamental verse. Okay. So I think that, again, just as we saw the previous verse, where we saw that the first half of the verse up to here is actually a prelude or an introduction to the second half of the verse. Don't hate your fellow man in your heart. You shall and therefore you shall certainly rebuke him, so that you don't bear his sin. I think actually that we have the same thing going on here. Lo tikom velo titor et bnei amecha. Don't take revenge upon and don't hold a grudge against your fellow Israelite. Rather, you should love your fellow man as yourself. So the way that you love your fellow man as yourself, I think what this verse is saying quite specifically, is that you don't take revenge on him and you don't hold a grudge against him. So I don't think this is a standalone phrase. As nice and as famous as it is as a standalone phrase, I think it's a follow-up to this first half of the verse. So really the commandment is don't, if we want to be technical, the commandment is don't hold a grudge. I'm sorry, don't take revenge and don't hold a grudge. And if in doing so, you, or rather, love your neighbor by yourself. How do you love as yourself? How do you love your neighbor as yourself? You don't take revenge, you don't hold a grudge. However, this is all more, I don't know if I call it poetic, but I guess just more flowing verses of the Torah. So it is entirely possible, or it is completely conceivable, that this message here is a standalone message. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, I'd like to try to get to the end of Leviticus 19 today. I don't know if we will. I'm also having battery problems here. Oh boy, we're down to 22%. I may have to relocate. Okay. And let me just see one thing here. No, not necessarily. Here, it's quoted. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so verse 19. Eth ukothai tishmeru be'emtecha lo tarbi'ah kil'ayim sodcha lo tizra'ah kil'ayim uvered kil'ayim shatnes lo ya'ale alecha. Okay, so here we have the laws of what's called kilayim, or mixing together. Let's get actually an etymology for the word kilayim. Two kinds, right? So we see, okay, so right, I should have picked up on that. So first of all, we see with the word kilayim, so it has a dual form. So in biblical and even modern Hebrew, there's not just in English, we know singular and plural. One sock, two socks, okay, or One house, many houses, singular and plural. In biblical Hebrew, there are three numbers. There's the singular, the plural, and then there's what's called the dual. The dual means a pair of. So maybe the best way to express it in English would be, you could say I have I don't know, one sock, a pair of socks, and 10 socks. Okay, it's a special form in biblical Hebrew which expresses a pair of, and that's with the ayim ending. So let's think of some examples. Yerushalayim, but it's not clear why that has dual ending. Mitzrayim is maybe a good example. Mitzrayim, which means Egypt, it really means a pair of Egypts, or pair of Mitzri, which was the ancient name for Egypt. Mitzri, I don't remember the exact pronunciation, but Mitzrayim, it has a dual ending, ayim. Why? Because anybody who knows Egyptian history knows that there were essentially two Egypts. There was Lower Egypt and there was Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt is the highlands, where the source of I don't know if it's a source actually. I think the source is not in Egypt. I think it's maybe in Ethiopia is the source of the Nile. There are many sources. I don't remember. But anyway, it's the highlands where the Nile River is flowing very quickly. And then there's the lowlands where basically the Nile slows down, widens out, and spreads out into a delta. So Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, Mitzrayim, okay, the pair of Egypts. Or another example would be, Yadayim, okay, hands. We have two hands. So if I want to say my two hands, okay, in Hebrew, I would use the word Yadayim. Okay, it's the dual form, it means a pair of hands. That's what we have here, Kidayim. Okay, we have the dual form, so it means a pair of something. But let's find out what. So here it says kinds. Okay, the BDB translates it as, it does say, in fact, dual here, right? Two kinds. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to pick out here. I am. Of course, I got to read in two kinds. So here it says that the underlying root is kele, dual of kele in the original sense of separation, two heterogeneities, diverse seeds, kinds, mingled seeds. So what is kele? So kele in the sense of, even in modern Hebrew, kele is jail, prison, right? So kele, confinement, restraint, imprisonment. Okay, let's see here, garments, imprisonment, kala, prison, kilayim. So I'm not sure exactly what the relationship is. Kilayim, so maybe like two cells or two prisons. Let's say two cells, okay, a mix or a pair of cells. Here they translate it as two kinds, or the BDV translates it as two kinds. So kele, kilayim. So kele is like a cell or a prison, right? So maybe we could translate it, think of it as a pair of cells. But the idea here is the mixing of two different types of things that don't go together for one reason or another. It's an expression of respect for Yahweh's world, and that not everything is to be mixed together. Certain things need to be separated. And so let's talk about that a little bit. I don't know, Paul. I don't know. I need an engineer. Would you like to come to Israel and be my social media / sound / video engineer? And then maybe you can answer the question. I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. Okay. So, so keep my statutes. Okay. Your animals do not, and the word tarbiyah, translated here is shall not breed kilayim. So what this is saying is don't take two different species of animals and attempt to breed them together. And I think the classic example of that is a mule. Okay, so mule is a domestic equine hybrid between a donkey and a horse. Is the offspring of a male donkey and a female horse. A male donkey and a female horse. So that would be an example. The horse and the donkey are different species with different numbers of chromosomes. Of the two possible first generation hybrids between them, the mule is easier to obtain and more common than the hinny, which is the offspring of a male horse and a female donkey. Mules vary widely in size and may be of any color. They're more patient, harder, and longer lived than horses and are perceived as less obstinate and more intelligent than donkeys. Okay, so that seems to be what it's speaking about. Okay, that you don't breed two different species. You have respect for the fact that each species should breed with its own type. Let's get a little commentary on that. So your beasts you shall not mate with a different kind. See if he has any comment on that. He only has on comment on shotness. Okay. Let's move on then. Savcha lo tazri'a kilayim. So you should not plant. You should not place seeds in your field from kilayim, from different types, from two different types. So I guess what that means is you don't take wheat and barley and then mix them together in the same field. You don't sprinkle wheat and barley seeds in the same field, or let's say wheat and corn seeds in the same field. Let's use the example of wheat and barley. So why would it? So let's think about logical reasons, right? Yahweh doesn't give us laws that are not logical. Maybe we don't always understand his logic, but everything has to be ultimately make sense because he's the one who created common sense. So I believe it all has to make common sense. So not mixing two types of animals together. Well, I believe if we look at the example of a mule, I don't know all. I believe mules are. So a mule has 63 chromosomes intermediate between the 64 of the horse and the 62 of the donkey. Mules are usually infertile for this reason. Okay. So right. So we see that that's one consequence. We see that the animal is going to be infertile, but there's also just something about mixing different things together, which seems to be a violation of the order that Yahweh has created in this world. Okay. Okay. So satchalo tazri'a kilayim. So don't mix your field with different types. I can think of a practical reason why this would be the case. Okay. So let's say you mingle wheat seeds with barley seeds and you grow a field that's kind of a hybrid of wheat and barley. Then let me just let some of this noise dissipate here in the background. So here. Right, then you're going to mix all these seeds together. Let's say the price for barley is different from the price from wheat. You basically could end up cheating your customers, right? They think they're getting all of wheat seeds, but they're getting partially wheat, partially barley, and maybe you're charging them a different price. But I think that's secondary. I think that we see here clearly that what this is saying is respect the differences of the different species, the different types of entities that Yahweh has created in this world, and respect that Yahweh has made order and differences between things, and not just to mix everything together in a giant chaotic mess. Okay. And then we have Beged Kilayim Shatnes Lo Ya'ale Alecha. So a garment of different types, which is called shatnes, and we'll talk about that word in a second. Lo Ya'ale Alecha. You should not allow it to go upon you. In other words, you should not wear it. Okay. So shatnes is actually, this Beged Kilayim or shatnes is actually where well, we see this word appear elsewhere. So let's just grab this. So Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 11. Okay, we have a restatement or an expansion of this same commandment that we see here in Leviticus 19:19. Okay, and it says lo tilbash shatnes. Then we get an explanation, or at least an example of what shatnes is. Tzemer ufishtim yachdav. Tzemer is wool. Fishtim is flax. These were two main materials that in ancient times, the ancient Middle East and the ancient Near East, that threads were spun out of. And you could actually see very interesting videos online about how they took flax and how you could take flax and there's a whole process, and you can end up making flax threads from it, and then of course once you have the threads, then you can make garments. So here we have the example. Tzemer is wool, okay, ostensibly sheep wool, and Ishtim is flax. So we have one thread from the animal kingdom, one thread from the plant kingdom, and they should not be woven together in a single garment, and that's shatnes. Okay. Okay, so let's see what Robert Alter has to say about this one. Shatnes is evidently a loan word. So we're saying the word shatnes is not an original Hebrew word. There are loan words throughout the Tanakh. Pharaoh is one example. There are many actually. Totafot in Exodus chapter 13 is probably another example, and there are many loan words throughout the Torah. So he's saying that this is evidently a loan word, and the etymology is uncertain. The way it is used here suggests it might have required some explanation for ordinary Hebrew speakers of the time of the writing. And in Deuteronomy 22:11, its only other biblical occurrence is explicitly glossed as a fabric made of interwoven threads of linen and wool. See the comment there? Maybe we will. Okay, so he's making an interesting point. Robert Alter's making a interesting point. We can see by the language here in Leviticus and also in Deuteronomy that this word shatnes needed explanation. Maybe not for the Israelites at the time of the giving of the Torah, but maybe this was for the sake of future generations, because this is an imported or this is a loan word. Okay, so it doesn't just say shatnes, right? It doesn't just say shatnes lo ya'ale lecha. It explains this word shatnes as beged kilayim. Okay, beged kilayim, shatnes, also known as shatnes, lo ya'ale lecha, and then we see the same thing in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 11, where it says lo tidbash, do not wear shatnes. And then we have an explanation of what it is. So in Deuteronomy 22:11, it's samru fishtim yachtav, wool and flax together. And here, it's beged kilayim, a garment of different types, of a pair of different types, right? Remember, kilayim is the dual form. Okay, so in each case, we're kind of getting an explanation, or at least getting some expansion or some explanation, you can call it, as to what the word shatnes means. And Robert Alter's picking up on that, and very, I think, astutely saying that that's an indication that maybe people at that time or maybe later didn't exactly know what the word meant. Maybe some people did, or maybe there was a fear that in future generations they wouldn't know what it means. So it also always has to be explained. It also certainly does not sound like a Hebrew word. I can't think of any roots that would be connected to it. And so it's not him. He's just quoting other scholarly material, but he states that it's a loan word, maybe from Egyptian. Who knows? I'm sure there's all kinds of speculation about it. Okay. All the prohibitions in this verse appear to reflect the general Israelite aversion to mingling distinct categories on which Mary Douglas is written. It should be I have no idea who Mary Douglas is. It should be noted that, as with some other prohibitions, what is forbidden for profane use is permitted for cultic use. The high priest's robe and the covering of the ark were woolsey, were linen and wool mixed together. Okay, so we should look into this a little bit more. Let's look at his commentary, his comment on Deuteronomy 22:11. What am I down to in battery? Oh, shoot. I got to plug in. I'm going to have to take a break in a second. Actually, I should do it right now because my battery's going to run out. I may have to go inside, actually. I think I am going to go inside. So let's do things this way. Let me take a break here for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'll put up some music, and I got to figure out a way to plug in. Because we are almost out of electricity here. Okay, we're back. All right, let me stop the music. Let me do a quick sound check. Can you guys hear me okay? Banners. Okay. Quick sound check. Please, somebody let me know if you can hear me okay. There's a lot of background noise in here, but there's not too much I can do about it. I'm in a public place, semi-public place. Hear me good. Okay, very good. Okay. Let's get this here a little bit. All right, so let's continue. So we were reading through this Robert Alter's commentary we're reading, right? Right. So we mentioned that shotness is a foreign loan word. Nobody knows what its etymology really is. And he refers us to his commentary on Deuteronomy 22:11. So let's check that out right now. Right now, easiest way to do that. Easiest way to do that. Here. Oh, I have to share the screen. Mistake. So Deuteronomy 22. .11. Okay, so again, what Robert Alter says here is this term seems to be a foreign loan word, perhaps from the Egyptian, and so lest its sense be obscure, the rest of the verse is a gloss on its meaning. Minglings of wool and linen were worn by the priests and used in the sanctuary trappings. So the separation of categories here may be intended to draw a line between the profane and the holy. Okay, so let's see where that is. Let's hunt that down for a second. Take it back. Oops. Yes. 8. Second here, please. On you. Don't turn on the AC, but okay. Do a rest. Okay. So high priest's robe and the covering of the ark. All right, so let's try to find that. Let's see where that's going to be. It'll be in Exodus. Oh, maybe around, let's see. Maybe around 30 or so. Incense, oil. Let's see, half. Meaning, no, it's way before this. Covenant, mercy seats, stains, tabernacle, sockets, here, put the door, altar, courtyard. Let me just Google it for a second, please. Exodus 28. Okay, so the garments for the priest. One second here. One second. Huh. So guess when it's saying he's talking about the robe, I guess he's talking about the ephod, which is the outer garment, or the me'il. I'll look this up on my own actually. So the eel is completely made out of techelet. So the thing is, I guess he's making an assumption. Let's see one thing. I'm not sure where this claim comes from. Let me just Google this. As soon as the computer charges up, I'm going back outside. This is really annoying. So may consist. So he might be basing it on rabbinical sources. May consist of wool and linen woven together, and that woolen tzitzit may be attached to a linen garment. Oh my God, a lot of noise here. All right, let's look this up. One second. One second here. One second. Huna clothing. All right, so let's read. Okay. There's shotness material. All this is irrelevant. Okay, so we're going to focus on this. I hope you guys can hear me all right because there's a lot of background noise. He's done a significant amount of research on. You say Nehemiah has done a significant amount of research on the name of God, but unfortunately, he's wrong in his pronunciation of the name of God. In fact, it's almost laughable when you understand what's going on in the Masoretic texts, how wrong he is. And I've pointed people in the past to it's like a 15-part series that explains this in great detail. So his explanation of Yehovah, as he calls it, is really wrong. It's arguably, provably wrong. And if anyone wants the long explanation, let me know, and you can get the details about that. Okay, any rate, let me close this out. So we see here, okay, Rabbinic Judaism maintains that shotness was permitted in the case of the avnet, in which fine white linen was interwoven with purple, blue, and scarlet material. According to the rabbis, the purple, blue, and scarlet material were made from wool and interwoven with fine linen. So they're making an assumption. This is beautiful. Here we have, I'm going to even post this actually. Okay, Karaite Judaism maintains that the purple, blue, where's this from? Maintains that the purple, blue, and scarlet materials must also have been made of linen, since the Torah prohibits wearing garments made from combinations of wool and linen. The Torah does not state from what materials the purple, blue, and scarlet threads were made. And now we have reference Exodus 28:6. So of course I agree. I won't say of course because I don't always agree with the traditional Karaite interpretation, but I agree with it in this case. So let's look at this verse. This is Exodus chapter 28, verse 6. Let's look at Exodus 28:6. It said here the Avnet, Exodus 28:6, the ephod. I think this is a mistake in Wikipedia. No, this is not the Avnet. The Avnet is something else. Oh, no, the Avnet is the Kohen's girdle. Oh, I see. The Avnet. All right. All right. Oh, my God. There's so much noise in the background. I really got to. Oh, my God. But we'll try to get through this, and I'll move back outside when I have enough battery to do that. So, okay, the Avnet. So let's find specifically where the Avnet is mentioned. 1 second. Breastplate, additional priestly garments, seats, Avnet. Let me find this. Can you guys hear me all right, by the way? I do have noise blocking headphones, but I don't know if you guys can hear me okay. I'm trying my best here. It's loud. Exodus 28:4 is where the Avnet is first mentioned. Let's go to that. Yeah, if you listen to this, Paul, if you listen to this 15-part series, which I've contact me privately. I've posted the link many times. It is done by a messianic guy, but he rarely mentions any messianic stuff in his proof. It's all just textual analysis of the Masoretic text. And I think he clearly proves that not only is Nehemiah wrong in this case, but he actually makes Nehemiah look like a complete fool. Pretty sad, actually. Okay, so Exodus 28:4. So the Avnet is mentioned here. Okay, so then it's mentioned again in 28:39. Let's go down to there. So it's just mentioned there. 28:39. So it just says Shibatz Ketonet Shesh. V'sita mitznefet shesh va'avnet ta'aseh ma'aseh rokem. So I think this is a mistake in Wikipedia. I don't think they mean the avnet. I think he means to say the ephod. So let's look at the ephod. The ephod is actually in 28:6, right? So what is the ephod? Let's get a picture of that. Garments of the. Okay. Let me open this in a image, a new tab. That works. So it's a low. Okay. So the ephod is this outermost garment, and you can see it's multicolored, right? So that's the ephod, this outermost garment. On it hangs the choshen mishpat, the breastplate of judgment. And here, talking about the ephod, it says vasut ephod zahav tcheret argaman tola'at shani v'sheish mashzar ma'aseh choshev. And I think this is the relevant verse. You should make the ephod out of gold and sky blue and tcheret argaman purple. Tola'at shani usually translated as scarlet or crimson. The shesh usually translated as fine linen, or fine woven linen. Mashzar, shesh masar, fine woven linen, ma'aseh choshev, the work of a craftsman. So the rabbis are making an assumption. So this is gold, okay? And you can't weave gold threads directly, I don't think, right? I think it's speaking about, well, maybe you can. Maybe that is what they did. And Techelet is the color light blue. It does not necessarily have to be dyed onto wool. It could be dyed onto flax as well, argaman, purple, etc. So it doesn't mention explicitly regarding the ephod that it has to be made out of, that it is made out of linen. It's made out of that it's made out of flax and wool. It's made out of linen and wool. It doesn't mention that at all. It just mentions different types of essentially colors or materials that have to be, not materials, different types of colors that have to be woven into the garment. Okay, so it's a logical leap on the part of the rabbis that the priests wore a garment which was interwoven or that was linen and wool. They're just assuming, okay, according to the rabbis, the blue that's the tchelet, sorry, the purple that's the argaman, the blue that's the tchelet, and the scarlet that's the tolat shani were made from wool and interwoven with the fine linen. It doesn't even mention fine linen here, I don't think. Let's look at it one more time. Yeah, it doesn't mention fine linen here at all. They're saying maybe that they're translating shesh masar as fine linen. Okay, but shesh is also not necessarily even linen. There's a lot of explanation or a lot of possibilities as to what shesh. At any rate, the point is that the rabbis are making certain assumptions. My God, so much noise here, I can't take it. The rabbis are making certain assumptions which are not necessarily correct. And of course, it says here, Karaite Judaism maintains that the purple, blue, and scarlet materials must also have been made of linen. Since the Torah prohibits wearing garments made from combinations of wool and linen, the Torah does not state from what materials the purple, blue, and scarlet threads were made. And I agree with this 100%. Okay, so we see that it's not true that that the priests necessarily, or that the priests wore garments of shatnez. And indeed, it wouldn't make sense to me. Just like the priests, just because they're priests, they wouldn't be allowed to start sacrificing pigs on the altar. Then, if shatnez is prohibited, it would make sense to me that it's prohibited for everybody. And in fact, it really is a. See, the rabbis, they say that the priests can do certain things that the nation cannot do, like light fires on Shabbat, because there's a Shabbat sacrifice that's brought, whereas the people cannot light fires. Now, I disagree with that, and if we have, I don't know if we're gonna have time today, especially with all this noise, but I don't think that Exodus uh, Exodus 35:3 is a prohibition against lighting fire, and if it were, it would apply also to the priests, just as it would to the Israelites. So the rabbis, they like to come along and say the priests were kind of exempt from laws. I don't know where this idea comes from. It might actually come from a hatred or a way of kind of separating the priests from the rest of the people in a bad way, in other words, because ultimately the rabbis wanted to replace the priests and the Levites. Ultimately, they did replace the priests and the Levites for the most part. And so that's very possibly where it comes from, to show, oh, these priests, they don't really keep the Torah. They have their own kind of Torah. I don't know. I'm speculating there, but there might be some truth to it. Okay, let's move on. I'm just waiting for this battery to charge him up so I can go back outside. But let's move on. So we can close this out now. So the bottom line is we see that it is not true, or not necessarily true, that the Levitical garments consisted of shatnez. Okay? And are these three examples? We know that the Torah works by examples. Are these three examples that are essentially trying to say keep things in nature separated from each other? And I would say, yes, they are. Also, by the way, there's a lot of times there's speaking about what if you have a garment that's made of, I've heard this in Karaite circles, what if you have a garment that's made of linen and tzitzit that are made of wool. Is that shotness? No, I don't think that's what shotness is talking about. If the tzitzit are attached to the garment, they're tied onto the garment, then that's not shotness. Shotness is only where the threads are interwoven. It's talking about in the garment itself, where the threads are interwoven, where you have let's say, what is the woof in the whatever it is, woof in the warp. Let's say where the woof is linen and the warp is wool. Okay, if you have wool tzitzit hanging off a linen garment, I don't really see that as a problem. That's my personal opinion. Okay, all right. Let's go on to verse 20. Any questions? Any comments so far? Any questions? Any comments before we move on? You guys can all hear me, I hope. I can barely hear myself, but I hope you guys can hear me. Okay, I'm going to move on. Leviticus 19:20. I guess we're not going to get to the end of Leviticus 19 today, but all right. I'm sorry. Right. Leviticus 19:20. Wa'ish yishkav et isha shikvat zera vehi shifcha nechrefet leish ve'afde lo niftata בחופשה לא ניתן לה ביקורת תהיה לא ימותו כי לא חופשה. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Maybe we can get a comment on it. Oh god, hold, it's a lot of noise. Yikes. All right, so first of all, let's get a translation. So verse 20 says, and should a man lie with a woman with a mission of seed? Oops. Here. And should a man lie with a woman with a mission of seed when she is a slave previously assigned to a man, but has not been ransomed or given her freedom, there shall be an inquiry. It shall not be put to death, for she has not been freed. Okay, so let's try to find out what's going on here. So, betrothed woman having sex with another man would be subject, like her lover, to capital punishment. Female slave not being a free agent would not receive the death penalty, and evidently this crime too is considered less grave. After an inquiry, a monetary penalty will be set to be paid to the man who betrothed her. Let's look again at the Hebrew. Okay. So a man who has sexual relations with a woman, and there is an emission of seed. In other words, there's ejaculation. She's a slave that is assigned, or betrothed. They translate here, as Robert Alter translated, assigned. So nechrefet is one of those words that it's not 100% clear. Leish ve'avdei lo niftata v'chufsha lo nitan la. So she's not been redeemed. In other words, her freedom has not been bought, or her freedom has not been given. Okay, she's not been redeemed. So is it speaking about an Israelite woman? I believe so in this case. Okay, so an Israelite woman that is taken as a shifcha, as a concubine, by an Israelite man. And then another man sleeps with this concubine and has sexual relations with this concubine, and there is an emission of seed into the concubine. Okay, and this concubine has not been redeemed, meaning her nearest kin has not paid off the owner of the concubine to have her redeemed, or her freedom has not been given, meaning her master has not given her freedom. La bikoret, so they shall investigate the matter. Lo yimutu, ki lo chupasha, but they shall not die because she was not She was not set free. So I have to admit, this one's a bit confusing to me. Again, we have Robert Alter's explanation here. So for sure, I guess what he's saying is that here, a female slave not being a free agent would not receive the death penalty. Let me just read this one more time for myself. Shalom Nitan. Let's read it from the beginning. Ishchav et Isha, שפת זרע והיא שפחה נחרבת לאיש ועבדי לא נפתתה, חופשה לא ניתן לה, וכל תהיה לא ימותו כי לא חופשה. So it's talking about this other man that sleeps with this concubine who belongs to another, or this man who sleeps with a concubine that belongs to another man, or is at least assigned to another man, and they have sexual relations, but they're not put to death because she has not been freed. I'm trying to figure this out in my head, what is going on here. She's not been freed, so they're not put to death. I really can't get this one in my head, and I don't really buy Robert Alter's explanation. Let's see, maybe we can look at some other explanations. Let me take a look at some of these commentaries, these built-in commentaries here. This is Leviticus 19:20. Go to 19:20. And let's see if we can get some commentary on this one. Okay, so Ellicott's commentary for English readers. So betrothed to a husband, better betrothed to a man. From the law about mixed seeds, the lawgiver passed it to heterogeneous alliances. The case here legislated for is that of seducing a bondwoman who's espoused to another man. Okay, I think I might be getting a handle around this one. This bondwoman might be either one of an intermediate kind, that is, one whose redemption money had been partially paid or belonged to that class who had no prospect of free discharge. According to the administration of the law during the Second Temple, the case before us is that of a Canaanite maid, partly free and partly servant. No, I don't go for that. So maybe what's going on here, okay, let me read this one more time in the Hebrew. Okay, so it's not that she has been, okay. So I guess okay, I think I see what's going on here. I think I might see what's going on here. I think maybe what's going on here is we're talking about a woman who's been sold into concubineship. So in ancient times, if you didn't have enough, if you owed a debt, you could sell yourself into slavery, or you could take your daughter and you could sell her as a concubine to another. In this case, I think we're talking only about Israelites. But at that point, so she's been sold as a concubine, but the man who acquired her as a concubine has not yet consummated the relationship. Why has he not consummated the relationship? Maybe he's giving some time for this concubine to either be redeemed by the original family. In other words, they have enough money that can now pay off their debt and redeem her, so she's no longer a concubine. Or maybe he has the possibility to just be a nice guy and free her, but he hasn't done that yet. So it's in an intermediate period where he's not yet had sexual relations with her, but yet she is still set aside for him. She's still assigned to him. And then another man comes along and has relations with this concubine. And the question is the concubine and the man who had relations with her, are they put to death? The answer is no. Why? Because we know that elsewhere in the Torah it tells us that if you have sexual relations with a married woman, for sure, both people, if it's consensual, both the man and the woman are put to death. If you have sexual relationships with someone who is betrothed or engaged to a man and it's consensual, both the man and the woman are put to death. So you might think that the second case, where a man is having sexual relationships with a woman, that this is like the second case. If a man has sexual relations with a woman that's engaged to another man, then both are put to death. So maybe in the case of a concubine that has been assigned to this man, maybe also if another man comes along and has sex with this concubine, then they should both be put to death. In other words, the concubine, if it's consensual. In other words, the concubine and the man that had sexual relations with her. And the answer is no. It's not the same case as a marriage. It's not the same case as a woman who's engaged to a man to be married. This is a case of a concubine who's in an intermediate state, because it's possible that the family will come along and redeem her, or it's possible that her master, her owner at this point, will be nice and let her free. So it's not the same as an engagement, like a marriage. This is a different situation. And since he hasn't had relations with her yet, he hasn't really acquired her. He's just waiting. Maybe the family will redeem her. Maybe he'll set her free, or maybe he will go ahead and consummate the relationship. At which point, after that, then if a man comes along and has relations with her, then both would be put to death. I think that's what's going on. I think that's what's going on. And you really have to kind of understand, you have to kind of go back into ancient Near Eastern times and understand the whole system of slavery, of concubineship, of betrothal or engagement, and what it all means. And I cannot say I'm 100% an expert on that. Definitely not. But I think that's what's going on here. I want to read this one more time, and then we'll go on to the next commandment, and then maybe we're going to end soon. There's a lot of noise. Okay, let's read this pulpit commentary. Distinction is drawn between adultery with a free woman or a betrothed free virgin, which was punishable by death, Leviticus 20:20, Leviticus Deuteronomy 22:23. We'll get to those. And with a slave betrothed to another man, probably a slave also. Oh, I didn't even think of that possibility. In the latter, I don't think that's the case. In the latter case, sorry, in the latter lesser punishment, no doubt, no doubt that of scourging, according to the Mishnah. So now we're getting to rabbinical Judaism, was to be inflicted on one or both according to the circumstances of the case. The word "she shall be scourged" shall be translated, there shall be an investigation, followed presumably by the punishment of scourging for both parties. Blah blah blah. Hold on a second. All right, let's read ahead because this commandment continues. Maybe the next couple of verses will give us some insight into this. Okay. Okay. So verse 21. U'ivit ashbo liyahweh petach on moed el asham. He shall bring his guilt offering to Yahweh, to the entrance of the tent of meeting to the sacrificial altar, the courtyard tabernacle, tabernacle courtyard, el asham, the ram for a guilt offering. Okay. So we see that he did do something wrong, but it's not punishable by death. So now this other commentary says that maybe so he says maybe this other man is also a slave. So in other words, the owner owns both this concubine, this female slave, and this male slave, and has determined that the female slave is betrothed to the male slave, but it's not considered the same as two people by their own volition who have that doesn't make sense to me, honestly. I think that speaking about it's speaking about a concubine that is taken by an owner, but the owner is holding off and not having relations with her, waiting to see if she could be redeemed. I think that's what's going on. But nonetheless, this concubine is still within the province of her master's household. So nonetheless, although it doesn't warrant the death penalty, he does have to bring what's called a guilt offering. So remember, we saw that a guilt offering has to do with with trespasses or with sins that were not related to the holy things for the most part. They were not related to issues of purity and impurity. That was the fifth type of offering that we learned about. Okay, verse 22. "V'chiper alav hakohen be'el hasham b'nei Yahweh." So the Kohen will gain atonement for him with the ram of the sin offering before Yahweh. Al chatato asher chata, because of his transgression or sin which he sinned. V'nisalach lo b'chatato asher chata, and he will be forgiven for sin which he sinned. Okay, so I don't know. We'd have to really pick this apart, and I'm not going to do it right now. But it seems that this woman, this concubine, that is somehow engaged to another man, the engagement doesn't have the same force as a regular engagement. Okay? Again, the idea that it's because it's a man and a woman that where this marriage was arranged by their owners, that doesn't sit well with me. I think maybe a better explanation is that it's not an engagement. That's this man who acquired her in payment of debt is waiting to see if she can be redeemed. So it's not really an engagement. It's a waiting period, and so therefore she's not engaged in, because we did see, as we saw in it was mentioned in Leviticus 20:20, that if you do have sexual relations with a woman who's engaged to another man, then that is the death penalty for both. Okay, so that's my best understanding of what's going on there. It's a bit technical, it's a bit complicated, but that's my best understanding. Okay, I think I may stop here. I think I've had enough. There's a lot of noise in the background, and I think this is a good place to stop. I have a cold. I'm tired. So I think we'll stop here. Before we do, any questions, any comments? I'm going at it for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I think that's enough. Any questions, any comments? There's too much noise. It's not conducive for me to think clearly. All right. Well, if not, then I'm going to wrap it up here. We'll pick it up again. We'll pick it up again next week. Hope you enjoyed the study. It's definitely a bit technical, some of the stuff, but it's more accessible than some of the stuff we were doing earlier with the laws of the sacrifices and the laws of purity and impurity. So we'll pick it up. We got up to verse 22. Make a note of that for next time. Second. Okay. And that's it. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov wherever you happen to be in the world. And yeah, thank you for your support for the World Alliance of Qara'im and for these studies. And we will see you again soon. We'll go out with a little bit of music. So Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov, everybody, wherever you are. And speak again soon.
Isla hermosa y sin ventura, nunca llegué a nacer. Isla hermosa y sin ventura, nunca llegué a nacer. Mis ojos se hincharon de tanto mirar la mar. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Es hermoso, dos taras tiene con él, la una que arrollada dos, la otra que echa sheshbesh. La una que arrollada dos, la otra que echa sheshbesh. Mi querido es alto y vano y una vara de expander. Mi madre hizo colada, lo metió a detener. Mi madre hizo colada, lo metió a detener. La, 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 la. Cuando el rey Nimrod al cabo salía, vino en el cielo y en la estrellería, miré todo santa en la llovería, que había de nacer Abraham había. Abraham había, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham había, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer entera de Penana, día en día ella preguntaba, ¿qué tiene la cara tan demonada? Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía. Abraham